I'm Dr. Tracy Stecker, and welcome to the Choosing Help podcast. Choosing Help presents conversations about courage, connection, and the transformative power of asking for support. Through candid discussions, expert insights, and real-world stories, this podcast breaks down stigma and opens doors to understanding. Join our community committed to compassion and courage. Because when we choose help, we choose life. I am Dr. Tracy Stecker, and I'm joined today by Michael Dennis. Michael is a pastor. He's been a pastor for the past 25 years. He's also a storyteller, a comedian, a father, a husband, a son, and he lives in Texas. And he's here with us today. We're going to talk about spirituality and spiritual well-being and how those might impact with mental health or seeking help for mental health treatment. So thank you for being here with us today, and would love to just start with a definition. How would you define spirituality? How would you define spiritual well-being? And then how does that relate to mental health?
Yeah. I mean, in its broadest sense, spirituality would, mind, body, and soul. And, our culture does a really good job of kind of fostering the mind and even the body, just thinking about our physical health. But not so much the soul,
Yeah.
really in the last maybe 30, 50 years, we've kind of swung away culturally from, conversations around the soul. And so spirituality, again, in its broadest sense, is just asking questions about life, um, you know, hopes, fears, purpose, where do I fit
Yeah.
um, in the world, and, perspective on the world. Those are all really spiritual questions. And, spirituality provides a framework to begin to explore those questions. And so that's, where it would kind of begin to kind of trickle into our mental health.
And so, how would you define, if you can, spiritual well-being? Does that mean connected with your spiritual self?
Yeah, spiritual well-being, I would understand that to be like just spiritual care. So, again, just like somebody would go to take a class, pursue a degree, somebody would go to a doctor to check on their health. How are we caring for our soul?
Yeah.
So spiritual well-being is, developing some type of process to pursue those interests.
Yeah. And so in my practice, I've seen a lot of people who get disconnected from their selves,
Hmm.
disconnected from others, disconnected from their place in the world. And I'm just thinking, as a pastor, you must have seen a similar thing. Is that something people come and talk to you about often?
Oh, yes. I think, I mean, I would say since the pandemic, it's even become more of a central question
Yeah.
for people. I'm in Austin, Texas, which is a spiritual city in general. But I have found maybe in the last 2 years that people are just more inquisitive, searching, kind of spiritually hungry to
Right.
ask questions. And I think because at their base level, whether they know it or not, I think their mental health is kind of driving those questions.
And so what kind of mental health concerns are you seeing?
Well, I mean, we're in a kind of a global city, so it's across the board. But
Mhm.
even on a personal level, I mean, definitely seen, severe depression, on a personal level, and my family. My mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and then later on with Alzheimer's, and so definitely seen it on a personal level. But even as a pastor, I started the church here in Austin, I guess about 16 years ago. Um, I mean, it's all over the place. Whether it's with our homeless community, and obviously they're experiencing challenges, or even at a professional level, trying to process some of the pressure that we're putting on ourselves. Also taps into some of those mental health areas.
Yeah. And so, so I've seen a lot of disconnection. Like I
Hmm.
said, people are getting disconnected from themselves. Substance use issues are notorious. People even are strongly desiring a disconnection from self. I don't want to feel this pain. I don't want to be suffering. And so they're purposefully disconnecting from self.
Yeah.
Isolation, loneliness through the roof right now in our culture. And like you said, we as a society really have disconnected from being able to easily talk about religion or spirituality. And so
Yeah.
we're having our younger generation now they're starting these conversations, which is kind of interesting. And I think it's opening the doors for some of us who may not have easily been able to have those conversations. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you look at, cultural events where I just turned 51 a couple of months ago, and so I had the privilege of growing up with at least the illusion of some security around me. And so as some of these cultural conversations have taken place, I have some type of background to engage them. But for a younger person in their 20s, it's this is essentially saying that everything's up for grabs.
Hmm.
Even if you look at what's happening in Minneapolis right now, whether you're politically conservative or liberal, it's definitely stirring some soul questions of like what's going on in my country, what's going on with my friends and my family, like what do I do, anger maybe. I don't know really how to understand these events. And that absolutely affects mental health and at a soul level also, because I mean, who wants to go and get quiet, and reflect on their soul when it feels like the world around them is just chaotic. And so I think
Right.
it creates a tension there for us.
Well, especially because the question I think on all of our minds is what is going on? What is the purpose in all of this? And then what is my role in it? What can
Yeah.
I do? Yeah. So what would you recommend people do when they're soul searching, or when they're struggling with some sort of mental health concern? What do you advise?
Yeah, so again, maybe a spectrum to kind of look at that. But if you just looked at it in its broadest sense, I think I use the phrase just start small.
Okay.
When a person's overwhelmed, with life, maybe it's drifted into discouragement or depression or even more severe challenges. You start small, and so you know wherever they are on that spectrum, take a shower,
Yeah.
get out of bed, get dressed, eat food, call a
Mhm.
friend, text a friend, start small, and there,
Mhm.
the snowball. Is what we're kind of banking on, is that, well, after 3 days of taking a shower, like, well, maybe I could put on some clothes, and then after 3 days of putting on some clothes, like maybe I could go to the grocery store. And people are incredibly resilient. So they can come back from it, but sometimes when we're in that place of our mental health feeling fractured, everything feels like a Mount Everest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to reiterate that point. So when things feel overwhelming, take a step back and just do that one thing that you can do right then. Maybe go to the kitchen and grab something nourishing for your body. Take a walk, take a shower, call a friend. Start small, but make it a positive step and just take that one step and then go from there. You don't have to think beyond that, just that one step at a time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine having a parent with Alzheimer's and
Mhm.
schizophrenia. You have been in that boat, where that's pretty overwhelming situation, where you're thinking, okay, what can I do right now? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially, we have our own mental health, and then we have our friends and families' mental health, and it is not uncommon for to get pulled into somebody's uh, chaos.
Yes.
And whether they're doing it intentionally or unintentionally, I don't know. But I mean, there were many times with my mom specifically where I would start wondering, like, I don't know which way is up and or down right now.
Yeah.
And it didn't take very much for me to get kind of pulled into that world with her,
Yeah.
and that was surprising for me.
Yeah. And so I can understand that for sure. Um,
Yeah.
because it's distorted.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just chemically, her thoughts are distorted. And so what she's communicating to you is some sort of reality that you can't see, feel, or touch. And so when you're trying to connect with her, it's like, I don't know which part to connect with, but you're connecting with her
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't think I like it in there.
Hmm.
It doesn't
Hmm.
feel safe
Hmm.
or real or even right for you. And so in those moments, in those moments of crisis, in those moments of chaos, you got an audience right now. What do you recommend? What should people do? And I heard you, one thing to do is just start small, but
Yeah.
you have that person there also with you. So how do you start small right then in the middle of chaos, crisis?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, boundaries, I mean, definitely is a part of it. And for my mom specifically, and even as a
Hmm.
pastor, you know, of having to set realistic boundaries. So my wife she's uh, a mental health therapist. And so
Uh-huh.
both of us are kind of in that world, but just at different perspectives. And so we always kind of joke, with ourselves of like, when I care more about their problem than they care about their problem, that's like a red flag
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
us, because it's their life, and that they should be the one the most invested. And so this is being very small, but just a tangible way of boundary setting is that I will sometimes just ask people to do something that would take 24 hours to accomplish a task. 24 hours you can take a shower. In 24 hours you can go apply for a job. In 24 hours you can make that phone call.
Hmm.
And that became like a data point, or it is a data point for me to determine like how invested and how much to kind of get into this tornado with them. And it's a way for
Yeah.
me to set a boundary that if they can't execute on a task that would take 24 hours, then it must not be that important to them, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
just because it's a something that I've said doesn't mean it needs to be important to them. But
Right.
it helps me to know, like, oh, okay, I can kind of take a step back and let them figure some things out, and then maybe I'll engage at a later point. But that's one tangible way of a kind of boundary setting.
I think that's really good advice, and it comes up a lot with a lot of people who have loved ones, family members with addiction and substance use
Yeah,
problems. And so you have somebody you care, maybe it's your teenager, maybe it's your spouse who's struggling with um, pain pills or alcohol or whatever it happens to be. And boundaries are going to become essential, critical
yeah,
in that particular situation. You love them, they're your loved ones. You desperately want them to be okay, but they're caught up in addiction. And so taking that boundary, I don't know what you would advise in that case, because you're probably not going to give them a goal to accomplish. Um,
right,
you're going to be watching it going, oh dear, we're in
yeah.
trouble here. Any advice for those people? Where would they go? Where should a family member go? What can they do in those circumstances?
Do you mean on a personal level or like an institutional level?
Either. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I mean, again, these are, I joke with my wife, that her world are the professionals. And as a pastor, I'm great with like Band-Aids and boo-boos. And, so I don't set unrealistic expectations for myself. But the whole illustration of like, put on your mask first. And so if you
Yeah.
do have a loved one, a family member that is involved, especially in addiction, um, you know, keeping yourself healthy is job number one, because
Hmm.
they will absolutely pull you into that tornado, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And so sometimes setting those boundaries of, you know, I guess you could look at it from financial, like how much financially am I going to be invested, in this
Mhm.
person? You will have to draw a line, and they're probably going to blame you for drawing that line, and that's
Mhm.
what makes it very difficult. Physical boundaries. My mom lived with me at one point, but before she lived with me, there were times where I just had to pull back from my involvement in her life. And it feels horrible in the
Mhm.
moment, but I knew like well, I'm not going to be able to help my mom long term
Mhm.
if I'm not in a healthy
Mhm.
place. And
Mhm.
so by making those difficult decisions of physical boundaries, financial boundaries, emotional boundaries,
Mhm.
just like even as a pastor, I think about like I don't want to pour my cup out metaphorically of emotion and energy and mental capacity so much that when I walk through the door at the end of a day that I have nothing for my children or for my wife. Like that's not really fair to them. And so just even being aware of, emotional, capacity and just as, if our cup is being poured out on those loved ones with addiction, we're really hurting ourselves. And that's where you cross over into some of that codependency language that you probably interact with a lot.
I have a puppy barking in the background. I'm trying to ignore him for a second, so excuse me. I think that's really, really, really critical advice. I'm glad I asked the question specifically about people that you love who might have substance use issues. Those boundaries are just so important because the love is real, the care for them is real, and on the other hand, there's not a lot that you can do with your love for them in
Yeah,
terms of even getting them help or giving them boundaries. You have to give yourself boundaries. And
yeah,
so, on the other hand, if you're the person who has a mental health or a problem with substances, um, s- just in terms of spirituality,
yeah.
having faith, any words of advice for those folks moving forward one step at a time?
Yes, and I find that to be the most difficult place is to take that first step of receiving help. And my only assumption is that our mental health must be such a fog that it makes it difficult, to take that first step of getting help. I think there's some fears about, once you start to peel back this onion. I've even seen people like they go to the worst case of like I'll end up in a mental institution, and so I don't, if they find out how quote unquote crazy I am, a lot of those fears are really hindering us in the long run. But
Hmm.
I mean, our church, if somebody comes in off the streets and they want to, get help through
Hmm.
for a mental professional, like I said, I do band-aids, so I'll meet with people for a couple of times and assess of like, hey, is this Band-Aid or is this emergency care?
Yeah.
And then we will oftentimes commit, a number of sessions. And in that place, we're looking for a partnership where we'll put up some money and then we want them to put up some money as well. And hopefully find a counselor that's going to reach some type of, quote unquote treatment plan. So there's actually a path forward.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that for every kind of religious affiliation, but just in my conversations with other pastors in our city, like that would be pretty standard that most faith communities would be interested in partnering with somebody and seeking help. Obviously, family and friends.
Hmm.
That's one of the first things when we start talking to somebody. We're like, well, hey, where are you at with your family?
Hmm.
And that will begin to give us a history with people of how long this has been progressing.
Yeah.
Um, So faith communities, families, friends, those would be some of the first steps off the top of my head.
I love that. That's really important information, I think, for
Yeah.
people to know that there's places you can go. Um, when I think about, and this is what I do, my area of expertise is actually those who resist seeking help. And what it boils down to, I think, for a lot of people is that discomfort. Um, it's hard to, one, admit that you're struggling, and then two, know the process of changing.
Mm,
Whatever it is you're struggling with, the process of changing it is potentially uncomfortable or
yeah.
painful. And so, as a pastor, I think we have an interesting relationship with pain and suffering in our culture. Mostly
Mm,
it's, I don't want to do that. No, thank you.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna take a pass on the pain and the suffering. And so I would be really interested in your perspective on pain, suffering, and is that a good idea? Is that how you counsel people just to say? Yep, no, I'll pass on the pain, or is it more of a like we do in the mental health field? Well, let's look at it. Let's look at what that pain is and maybe tease that apart a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And our scriptures at least give a starting point to that conversation that isn't specifically kind of gives us that third party in the conversation that isn't just about my pain or their pain, but we can go to the scriptures, and from Genesis to Revelation. I mean, there's stories of pain, and that's sometimes very difficult for people to see. Some of it's culturally, as Americans, we're so blessed and we've
Yeah.
experienced really just so much comfort, so that the moment we get a flat tire, that is shock to our system.
A
And then in the
second flat
spiritual,
tire and you're insane.
yeah, that's too much. Yeah. And then from a spiritual perspective, I mean, unfortunately, some of our churches in the United States, in my opinion, have focused too much on how, God is here just to make you happy. And that's
Mm,
why I oftentimes will go to the scriptures and show like, oh, that's actually not what the scriptures teach about him. He created the world to be perfect, but there's a brokenness that took place, and we see that pattern of brokenness and pain in all of human history, in all cultures, and in all different types of people. And I think hopefully that's my attempt to try to bring some comfort to that person, because they begin to see like, oh, this isn't a me problem. Like, I didn't. Everybody else in the world doesn't have it all figured out, and I'm the only one who messed it up. This is actually a human problem,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're going to encounter pain and suffering, and it's I think it's an interesting topic right now, especially with social media being able to see so many different um, perspectives of people, and it's easy to then turn inward from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like I said, what I'm seeing is a lot of disconnection from all of it. Disconnected from
Mm,
self, disconnected from friends and family, others, and then of course a spiritual disconnection. And what do you have when somebody's really in that spiral? And so having multiple avenues, having places where people can go and seek solace or seek some guidance, I think is really important. So Michael Dennis is one of those people. If you live in
yeah,
Austin, Texas,
yeah,
um, he's there to help. Yeah. Or
yeah,
you could
yeah,
contact us at choosinghelp.com. We have a resources tab where there's all sorts of places people could seek help, family members or themselves. You could contact us. So I love that you were here with us today. Any
yeah.
final words you'd want to share?
No, I think just what we were hitting on there at the very end, the benefit of community.
Yes.
Because when our mental health is in a place of inward and isolation, and kind of ruminating on these thoughts, just the simple fact of being around other people can begin to kind of break through
Yeah.
some of that rumination. Because there's been so many times where I will say something that I've been ruminating on, and as it's coming out of my mouth, I'll know that's not true. I don't believe that. I don't think that. But I didn't realize it was inside until it came out, if,
Mm-hmm.
in the weirdest way. And so people,
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately, we joke about it in our church. We call us all porcupines. Like, eventually, we're going to stick each other.
Yeah.
So it will happen, but the strengths far outweigh the losses,
Yeah.
and community allows some of that breakthrough and that isolation. So those are maybe just some parting thoughts for us.
I love that. And I'm sorry, I'm going to add one more. As a comedian, that's
Okay.
that's obviously one way that you give back to the community. You clearly have a perspective where you see things that might give people some joy.
Yeah.
Bring them into your world, your viewpoint, in order for them to see the humor in it. That's another way I think it's very healing. It's one of those unique skills that it connects in one story or one joke where you connect with humor, you're connecting with self, others, and the larger universe. It's just such a gift to be able to be a comedian. Got any stories there for us?
Oh, I mean, nothing short enough off the top of my head, but you're absolutely right. There is a
Mhm.
benefit of laughing with other people in a room. And again, I see it here in Austin where somebody on the stage will say something, and you can fill this room of maybe 50 people, and you can feel the room say like, "Oh, you shouldn't say that," or "That's not okay," or "We're not supposed to say that."
Mhm.
And then the comedian, it's like a magic trick. They'll be able to like release that tension so
Yeah.
that everybody in the room is like suddenly reminded like, oh yeah, we're human beings,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
And then you get laughter.
Yeah.
And that is a healing process for everybody in that room, because it took
Mhm.
this really ominous thing we're not supposed to, and then, hey, okay, let's settle down, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um so that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, it's a beautiful trait. It's a beautiful skill to have, I think. So, if anybody wants to watch, I don't know if your videos are available online, but Michael Dennis.
Yeah, I have a Michael Dennis comedy on Instagram, and I'll throw up
Excellent.
bits on there sometimes, but I just do it for fun. I call it like community theater. It's just a fun
Absolutely.
hobby.
Absolutely.
But I enjoy it, and it's been a great way just to get to know some of these 20 and 30-year-olds. Austin's becoming kind of like the next LA, New York for comedy, and there's men and women here chasing that dream, and it's really fun to be around them.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you for being with us today, for spending
yeah,
some.
100%. Thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
And